All right, we are officially live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special live stream of Center Theater Group's Theater Artist Classroom Connection program. Usually, I would say we're coming to you live from Los Angeles, but today we are coming to you live from Milwaukee and Denver and Portland and Chicago and New York and LA. So a lot of different places all across the country on December 9th, 2020. Because we just went live and we know it takes some folks time to log in, I will speak briefly about the program and then we will do some introductions before we get chatting. So first, we are here on behalf of Center Theater Group, also known as CTG, which has been bringing theater to LA for over 50 years. We'd like to acknowledge that all three of our theaters stand on the traditional lands of the Chumash, Tongva, and Kizh peoples. My name is Christine Bryhan. I'm a theater maker and educator here in LA. I've been a teaching artist for many years now at CTG, and I've had the pleasure of working on this program all fall with the support of the CTG education team, especially interim education director Camille Shankin and our amazing administrative assistant Aurora Elog. Our idea behind this program, the Classroom Connection series, is to bring together innovative theater makers with the next generation of artists for a series of conversations which will be broadcast live and then posted for later viewing on our webpage at centertheatergroup.org. But today is a little different. Rather than just connecting one artist to one classroom, today we have two artists connecting to student representatives from regional theaters across the United States, all in response to one specific theatrical work. So it is my great pleasure to introduce playwright and performer Dael Orlandersmith and director Neel Keller. They have been generous enough today to come and answer questions about their recent work, Until the Flood. I'll introduce Until the Flood in just a minute, and in fact, you'll hear a lot about it for an hour. But first, I would love for our viewers to know a little more about our visiting artists. So Dael Orlandersmith is a playwright and performer, nationally and internationally produced, award-winning playwright and performer, a Pulitzer Prize finalist and Drama Desk Award nominee for her 2002 play Yellow Man. She's also the recipient of a Lucille Lortel Foundation Playwriting Fellowship and an Obie Award for her play Beauty's Daughter. Her work also includes Forever, Until the Flood, Stoop Stories, Black and Blue Boys, Broken Men, Horse Dreams, Monster, The Gimmick, and The Blue Album. Her work's been produced at Center Theater Group, the Repertory Theater of St. Louis, Rattlestick Playwrights Theater, Milwaukee Rep, The Goodman, ACT Seattle, Portland Center Stage, the Galway Arts Festival, Berkeley Rep, Long Wharf Theater, the New York Theater Workshop, and on and on. She's currently working on a new play called New Age for Milwaukee Rep and another play for the Goodman. And Ms. Orlandersmith is also in the process of writing a book of autofiction. And Neel Keller is also with us. Neel is Center Theater Group's Associate Artistic Director, Literary Director, and a very much working stage director. He and Dael Orlandersmith have collaborated for a long time, and they met almost 30 years ago on a production of Romeo and Juliet. Over the last 6 years, they have collaborated closely on the creation and production of Until the Flood and Forever. Neel's other recent productions include world premieres of Eliza Clark's Quack, Julia Cho's Office Hour, Jennifer Haley's The Nether, among others. And beyond CTG, Neel has directed at a lot of theaters, including the Public Theater, New York Theater Workshop, Rattlestick Playwrights Theater, La Jolla Playhouse, Goodman Theater, South Coast Rep, Williamstown Theater Festival, and on and on. He is a member of the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society and the Directors Guild of America. Dael and Neel, we are so grateful for you both taking your time to be here today.
Thank you for having us. That's really nice. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's our pleasure. And I don't want to forget the other amazing artists we have joining us today. We have student reps from major regional theaters across the U.S. I have had the chance to meet with all of these students, and here's what I'll say. If these folks are the next generation of American theater, I think the future is looking really bright. Students, we would love for you to introduce yourself with your name, pronouns, the theater you're repping, and if you want to shout out your school and tell us your artistic interest, that would be great. So let's start with Michaela.
Okay. Hi, my name's Michaela Albano. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm representing Portland Center Stage in Portland, Oregon. And I am just about to finish my bachelor's degree in culture and diversity. And I just finished writing my thesis paper on theater in the equity and inclusion realm.
Great.
So I'm excited about how those two combine together. And I'm also an actor and creator.
Thanks, Michaela. Welcome. Marie Antoinette.
Hi, my name is Marie Antoinette. My pronouns are she, her. Representing the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. I go to Denver School of the Arts High School, and I do acting and playwriting.
Thanks, Marie Antoinette, and welcome. Fletcher, let's go to you.
Hello.
Ooh, we're having a little sound problem, Fletcher. Hold on a second. Try it again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Fletcher Jones. I am CTG. Pronouns are he, him.
You went out again.
Fletcher, we're having sound problems. If you will put your stuff in the chat, I can also speak for you, Fletcher. So why don't you use the private chat and I will be your voice for your words, if that's all right. Great. While we're letting Fletcher do that, let's go to Ariel.
Hi, thanks. My name is Ariel Bastida. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am representing the Goodman Theater in Chicago as part of the Goodman Youth Arts Council. The school that I was attending before I took a semester off because of COVID was the New School of Drama in New York City, where I was studying playwriting and directing and acting with a focus in acting. As an artist, I'm really interested in exploring multiple perspectives. As a mixed Polish and Mexican artist, I dedicate my work to exploring mixedness and mixed identity, as well as work for a company called The Mixed Space, which continues to work for that. And I'm certified in DEI as well. So all of that I try to combine in my theater work.
Thanks, Ariel. And I want to go back to Fletcher. So this is Fletcher J. He is affiliated through CTG. His pronouns are he, him. I know he is a performer, and we're very glad that he's here today. He's been working with CTG for a while, so we're very happy for him to be on this cast. Welcome, Fletcher. Alexandria, let's go to you.
Hello, my name is Alexandria Woods. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'll be representing Milwaukee Repertory Theater in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I attend Rufus IV High School, and my interests are in acting as well as dancing.
Thanks, Alexandria. And last but certainly not least, Sonia Sophia, take it away.
Hello, I'm Sonia Sophia R, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I currently attend Los Angeles City College, and my major is literature, and I'm looking to preserve and get literature written by BIPOC out there, and to make sure it's always being written.
Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to be here with us today, especially at this crazy time in the semester. You are in the home stretch before a much deserved break. Thank you. Thank you. And lastly, as I mentioned, we're gathered here in response to Dael Orlandersmith's piece, Until the Flood. Until the Flood was originally commissioned and produced by the Repertory Theater of St. Louis. And I grew up like 5 minutes from there. And it was subsequently produced around the United States and in Ireland and in Scotland and in England with Dael, Neel, and the same creative team for all, including here at Center Theater Group at the Kirk Douglas in January 2020. We got it just in time. Through a partnership with All Arts in New York and theaters across the country, a complete recording of the play using footage from the Rattlestick Playwrights theater production is now available to watch for free online on Center Theater Group's digital stage. So if you'd like to check that out, if you haven't gotten to see it yet, please check out our digital stage after this conversation. Our student reps here have watched and read Orlandersmith's play and have prepared questions for our artists around this work. So we're going to start opening questions from them. If you watching at home have questions for our artists or for our CTG staff, You can use the chat function to participate. And if we do have time, we'll dive into some of those as well. And that is as much talking as I will do for the time. I would love to open things up for some questions. Why don't we start with Sonia Sophia?
Sorry, I was muted. So I watched and read Until the Flood, and I found it really interesting as you had a very clear tone throughout the whole play and production. Did you have anyone in mind, a specific audience, a specific, demographic that you were looking to reach, and who do you think would be the demographic that would benefit most from watching or reading Until the Flood?
I didn't know the way that came about, because I don't work that way individually. The way that came about was because of the racial unrest in St. Louis. I was approached to write about it, and they wanted to use theater as a means to help create conversation. St. Louis is the third most segregated city statistically within the United States, Milwaukee being the first. And so between 2012 to when Michael was killed, there were 750 people of color that were taken aside on petty crimes like, driving too fast. And let's say today they get hit with $100. Then if you don't have the money, then tomorrow you get hit with another $100. And also the city was segregated. For instance, let's say you live in LA, right? Okay, so Santa Monica has a mayor. And then South Central has another mayor. So to keep money coming into those towns, they were busting people left and right and keeping it segregated, but they needed money to come into those towns. So the question that you ask me, and this gets, gets into really crazy turf. I want all kinds of people to come see my work. I am, I'm a theater worker, and I think the job for us is to be mental and emotional travelers, and I think everybody should be part of that. So I don't really think in terms of that way. I mean, obviously, if I'm writing a certain character and I'm looking at background and what have you, the specificity of that technically has to be there. But I'm not someone who gives messages. My saying is in my doing. Because I find if you give messages, you're preaching. It's no longer about theater. And sometimes I think a politic can surpass the art. So I don't know whether I answered you, Sonia. Did I?
Yeah, you totally did. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
It was interesting, to sit in the audience in all the different cities when we did the play. And this thing Dael says about St. Louis wanting to somehow find a way to encourage conversation in St. Louis. And I feel like Dael structured the play in such a way that the characters are very separate from each other, which is what we found in St. Louis when we went from sort of little city to little city and neighborhood to neighborhood. And they didn't really communicate. So I think in a very deep way, Dael's written it so they do communicate with each other, the characters, but not in a direct way where there's a story or a conversation they're having. And it always forced, therefore, the audiences to sort of have a conversation themselves about the different characters and their relationship. And that conversation was always more interesting when the audience was diverse. The cities where we had the most diverse audiences, there was an energy in the room during the performance because people would literally respond to different characters in different ways at different moments. And they would hear the person sitting next to them responding very differently to the same character as they were responding to, but in a different way. And it calls them to start to look around and understand that other people were seeing things differently. And so I feel like the more varied people that came to the play, the better the play worked.
Exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alexandria, let's go to you.
I think you're muted.
Of course, I'm muted.
We all do it. Don't worry.
I watched and read the play and I enjoyed it heavily. One of the parts I really did find intriguing was all of the various perspectives. So when you were in the creative process of the play, when and why did you choose to do more than just one perspective? Was it right off the bat you knew I want more than just one perspective, or was it in over time, you realize there needs to be just a little more dimension, a little more
Because
depth.
because the question that we put out, because again, also they're composite figures, just to let you know that, they're not. I mean, I met with a lot of people over a 2 to 3, period of time. I met with like close to 100 people, and Neel and I just went with the stories that we thought were the most, that could bring it home. It's important that you see all kinds of perspectives because again, I'm going to go back to this. As a theater worker, beginning, middle, end, story, conflict, resolution. And you have to be, you have to be fully there in terms of that. You don't have to necessarily like a character, but you have to understand them. This comes right back to this because you've got the politic of flood, no doubt. There's that. But in terms of making it active on a page and on a stage, you have to have different perspectives. So we were working with a social worker, and then the question was, because when Steve Wolf, who was the former artistic director, he goes, I need to see how this shooting affected everyone. My question was, how does this shooting affect you on a day-to-day level? All the varied people that lived in that area. And that's exactly what happened. How does this affect you? What is it like on a day to day for those of you who come from a different generation? It was interesting to hear them talk, people who were around, say, during the 60s and the 70s, and how the way they responded to this. So yes, it's not just one section of people. We had to look at everything because you've got that going on, and then you've got the story of race, and then you've got the individual stories of Michael Brown and of Darren Wilson. It's very varied. It's not, as for lack of a better term, black and white as people want it to be. And then you've got their own individual stories as young men being victims of toxic masculinity, because we've not created a space for where men can talk about how the way they feel. We're just beginning to look at that now, combined with masculinity and race. I mean, it's very multi-layered.
It was interesting because I remember when we first started working on it, it became immediately apparent that the only person in the world who actually knew what happened in the seconds that Michael Brown and Darren Wilson were together was Darren Wilson, because Michael Brown was dead. And there were no other completely reliable witnesses. Many people changed their testimony. People were pressured to change their testimony. It was impossible to know what actually happened. And there was something freeing about that, because Dael and I are not from St. Louis. We didn't want to go into St. Louis and sort of tell people this is what happened. And we didn't have that pressure because nobody knew what happened exactly. Yeah. There were different points of view about what happened. And so it became a much broader conversation, which, as Dael says, delved into the history of race and racism and geography in St. Louis, which is very complicated, and all of these issues. And it opened up this whole other conversation. And I think people in St. Louis came into the theater, many people, not everyone, but a lot of audiences would come into the theater. And it was clear they came prepared to be lectured to. They had read about the book in their subscription program, and they thought, oh, someone's going to tell us that we're bad people, or tell us, things that they've been beaten up for a year about this incident. And I think slowly, as the piece unfolded, and it starts in a way very movingly but quietly with a character named Louisa. And I think they started to open up and to realize, oh, it's not someone telling us this is what happened or this is not what happened. It's not about that at all. It is much more about a murky, complicated conversation about legacy and history. Yeah. And so the multiple point of views, I feel like, were important from the very beginning, because there was no one story, and that's one of Dael's amazing gifts, is to be able to be empathetic and compassionate and understanding of people with very different, occasionally horrific views, as one character in this play does have, and to find some humanity in them that allows her to play them as an actor every night, 8 times a week. It's
thank you.
Really.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes.
You're welcome.
Ariel, let's go to you.
Oh my gosh, that is just awesome. I just love how you you approach your work, Dael. I was listening to the podcast actually on CTG's website where Neel, you interviewed Dael about the process. And I found it extremely engaging how you approach this work, as you said, not with a message and wanting to drive a message home, but in terms of just how everyone is sharing their personal experience. And as a theater maker and also someone who engages in a lot of theater, I found that was so refreshing, because I feel like we all want to just have a message and make it really stick out, and that just having just approaching this work with that in mind was awesome. So my question was, when approaching work, both in directing and writing and performing in it, in terms of talking about responsibility, do you feel like your responsibility has changed throughout the production of the piece, and or what do you feel is your responsibility to the piece? Because it's not, as you had mentioned, not driving home a message, but more so just coming with a bunch of different perspectives. So as an actor in it, how do you approach your responsibility with that, and of the writer, and as a director, how do you approach your responsibility in that, would be my question.
I mean, I think, again, making sure that the characters are fully realized, that they're fully, that they are fully clothed then unclothed, so we can see, that slow striptease, where we see that they're multi-layered people. Again, we don't have to like them, but we have to understand them. So that's what that's what I go for. I mean, and you have to have compassion. I mean, Doug Ray, the guy who's, he's not born that way. I don't believe that people are born that way. We look at the circumstances that help create why he is the way he is. Because, there's this expression that I've learned fairly recently: hurt people hurt people. And I realize, that's just reductionist, because, we really can't go into a whole lot like in less than an hour, But having said that, you really do have to understand the psyche. I mean, one book that's pivotal is a book that I always like refer to this book called Drama of the Gifted Child by a woman called Alice Miller, who talks about how the way our lives are formed, how the way our parents conditioning shapes us as people. And her whole premise is that no matter what, a child is born gifted. But when parents, and you have toxic parents that poison their children, when they want extensions of themselves, when they glorify themselves and they expect their children to be extensions of them, combined with where they come from, that's going to cause toxicity. So that book is gold when we look at early development, because I'm interested in looking at where somebody comes from, who their parents are, what education are they, how do they feel about themselves, what draws them to what they're drawn to. There are certain people who want to make a living. There are certain, like when you hear people say, here's an example of something like that. Let's say, and you might have done this yourself, and it's not a judgment, it's just an observation. Let's say you have someone who puts you down, right? And you're in school, and your goal is, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get a master's. I'll show them. Why are you making this person so important? What does that say about yourself? That person, meanwhile, is not even thinking about you, right? They've said what they had to say. They've walked away from you. But when you say something like, I'll show them, you're using that person as an impetus. They don't give a shit about you. But why do you feel the need to show somebody something? More than likely, that person who thinks that way, they're coming from a place where they've been put down, and they're using that person as a means to keep them going. They have to feel important within other people's eyes because they've been made to feel like they were garbage. So the inner work, I'm interested in how the way people think, where they come from, how they're shaped. Yeah. I don't know if what I said made sense. Did what I said make sense?
It did.
Yeah.
For a director, responsibility is an interesting question because my responsibility is to do whatever I can for Dael to end up as a writer with the best play she can write, and as an actress with the best performance she can write. So in some level, my responsibility is very limited. right? Although there's a much greater responsibility, which you all face, which is the choice of the projects you do and the people you work with. So I remember Dael had told me we were working on another play when she first got the offer to write Until the Flood. And she very soon came and told me, said, I've gotten this offer and I've told them that you're doing the play. And I was like, oh, I have to talk to my wife. I have to figure out, because it could mean being away from home for a long time, et cetera. Months later, Dael sent me a draft, the first rough draft. And I said to my wife, I read it, and she knows Dael very well. And she's like, how is the play? And I said, if I don't direct this play, I should stop directing, and I felt like that was my response. The play was not done. It was not finished. But in that moment, I could tell both I have not only an artistic, but now a personal responsibility to Dael because of the years we've worked together and the commitment we've made to each other. And I also I felt a responsibility of, if I'm going to be someone putting stories out in the world in a theater, if I don't spend my time and whatever talents I have working on this play, I shouldn't be working on any of them, But when we get into the work, so I feel like that's sort of your choices define your responsibilities in a way. And then I feel Dael and I, we've worked on some plays that touch on very difficult subject matter, sometimes very personal, autobiographical subject matter. It's very difficult to work on. But one thing that I appreciate about Dael is I feel like when we get in the room, we also ultimately are both very interested in the craft. Like Dael says, beginning, middle, and end as a writer. And she has great craft as an actor. And I try and bring my craft as a director about, like, does that moment work? Do we need a loud sound cue there? Do we need more talking there? And somehow simultaneously concentrating on just the details of the craft can allow you to work on very difficult subjects and very difficult work that do convey something to people that you're proud of, and that in a sense you might say you feel a responsibility to communicate. But it's not that Dael and I didn't spend a lot of time during Until the Flood talking about it's our responsibility to do this or do that. We both were drawn to the material, the idea of the show. We have a history together that makes us, I think, willing to leap and trust each other, and it felt like an important thing to bring our talents to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Fletcher, I see you're back. Let's see if your sound works. Uh-oh.
It's like this. It's like this.
Yes.
Like Fletcher, like his he's frozen 1 minute, and the next minute he's not frozen, then it's
We're gonna hear from Fletcher.
My Dr. Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Read Fletcher's.
So my first question is for Dael. I'm getting faces like you guys. You can hear me?
Yeah, in and out.
I
Slowly.
can't stand the internet.
I hate the internet.
We're also sick of it.
See, this is just horrible. On my end, I don't know.
We can hear you now.
Okay, so what it seems to be is I'm dropping in and out. So maybe if I can get my piece out fast enough, you'll be able to answer.
Okay.
So my first question is for you, Dael. It was very interesting scene in the barbershop where you had three characters, the barbershop owner discussing, I'm not a victim. And that struck home for me for several reasons, because I felt as though a lot of Black people, just not to generalize Black males, have this lack of victim complex. They don't want to be a victim. Do you feel like now in 2020 that complex has shifted somewhere else, or it's still very prevalent?
Well, I think there's a difference between vulnerability and victimhood. And also, again, when you look at that character, Reuben, he chooses to live where he lives. Because I think a lot of the times what happens is there's another form of systemic racism that happens where people think that because if you are of color and you come from a poor background, and he says it, you are innately, intellectually, and we have to take care of you. And what he is saying is, I choose to live here. Because, it's not what it is now. I mean, it's a whole different thing. Me coming out of Harlem in the South Bronx, when I grew up, I would have people talking to me like this and saying, oh, you poor child. opposed to looking at the fact that I had a brain. I can hear you okay. Please don't talk slowly. And just where I live is kind of shitty, very shitty. And I'm one of those people who I am motivated. I'm not going to put something up my nose and in my arm. I'm not going to crank out, kids when I'm 13, 14 years old. That's the expectation. And so when he responds the way he does, because he is a vulnerable man and a funny man, if you approach him as, and a lot of people I know, if you approach them as intelligent human beings that you don't have to take care of and infantilize, he'll be okay, and respect him as a vulnerable, intelligent man versus someone that you have to take care of, i.e. in a childlike way. So that's why I wrote that character too, because a lot of times people don't, expect someone to actually have a brain and come from a place, to come from that, to come from Ferguson or within the Ferguson area or certain poor areas. I know people who have who come from a rough place and they make sure their kids don't get caught in the street, and they take their kids to the museum and they check their children's homework. You never hear about those people. That's why I put in Ruben, and that's why I put in the other young man who wants to go to California. I forgot his name. What's his name? Paul. Does that answer you, Fletcher?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Let's go to Marie Antoinette.
So I read and I watched the play. And one thing that I really Okay. One thing that I really appreciated about it was how distinct and opinionated each character was, and how they were acted that way as well. They felt like real people. And kind of like how you said at the beginning, there isn't really any connection between them that's like to do with communication. But I found a constant repetition of flow between all the characters, just in different contexts. And I was wondering what the meaning was behind that, and does it tie into the title?
Okay, it's the St. Louis, near the Mississippi River. We're talking about, blood, obviously blood, right? I mean, blood runs through this, which is also liquid. And also, again, St. Louis is a Catholic city. So within Catholicism, people talk about cleansing. Every religion, right, talks about cleansing. We mentioned kind of Noah's Ark, as well, that kind of thing. So again, cleansing, and that's a whole, and that's what people were looking for, I guess, within their wanting to talk, a sort of cleansing. When Steve came to me about this, and then Neel and I, started working on that. So thus until the flood. Yeah, and also water, in terms of the elements, as we all know, the tsunami, and down in New Orleans, is the number one destroyer in terms of the four elements. So it alternately destroys, but it alternately cleanses. It is literally, in terms of the four elements, the strongest out of all of them: fire, wind, earth, all of that. It's the strongest element, which can do either two things: destroy or cleanse. So that's why. Those are the reasons.
And Dael and I had an opportunity, which you don't often have, to go and spend a lot of time in St. Louis before the play. Often you'll show up in a city and do a play and you've never been to the city before, and certainly not to sort of research the play you're working on. Obviously, Dael went for interviews. The theater also brought the designer and myself out for a lot of trips. And we just learned about St. Louis, and you felt, not only in St. Louis, but the country, but certainly in St. Louis, at the time we started the interviews, which was, give or take a year after the shooting, that there was either going to be, as Dael says, a huge flood that was going to destroy things, that maybe it was going to be a flood of blood, right? Or there was going to be some sort of cleansing. And it was like the balance of those forces, both represented by the idea of flood and the idea of like water pushing at a gate when we went down to the Mississippi there and the thing. I think we just felt that sort of, I don't know what the word is, it's not exactly tension, but that pressure that a dam was going to break, and maybe it was going to be the dam Doug Ray talks about, just basically a flood of blood, or maybe it would be the flood some of the other characters talk about, which is something about cleansing, and change, but that we were at that point.
Yep.
Michaela, let's go to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi. It's been talked about a little bit already, but I'm really interested in the relationship that you have, Neel and Dael. I was wondering if you both could talk about a little bit specifically, because the context of this play is so centered on Black life. I'm just very curious how the process went for a white man to direct a Black woman in this play, and how that experience was personally for you, Neel, and for you, Dael. I know you have a really specific relationship.
Let me ask you a question.
As far as I know.
Here's a question that comes.
Okay.
Do you feel that only a Black person can direct a quote unquote Black play, or a white person can direct a quote unquote white play?
I guess I wouldn't know, since I don't have, as a young white woman, I don't have the context for people of color to be able to know that, to know the answer to that. But yeah, I guess just because this play has such a particular context, is why this question was curious.
I mean, for me personally, I want somebody who is willing, no matter what color they are. And obviously, and I don't say that to be flippant, because as someone who's both Black and female, of course I want there to be women and women of color and everybody working. But for me, what I look for is someone who is willing to be uncomfortable and ask me questions. If we're going to go on this ride together, this mental and emotional ride together, if we're going to be, I mean, our job is, to be as theater makers and as explorers of the soul, you have to be able to ask me questions, and vice versa. So that's the way I approach things. If someone is that nervous, no matter what color they are, if someone had said to me, for instance, here we go, and I've had this happen. If a white person says to me, well, we just have to go love each other, it's like, I'm going to tell you where you can go and how you can get there. If you are of color and you say to me, well, of course, Darren Wilson killed Michael Brown, and we need to, and I'm being reductionist and generalizing when I say this to you. I'm not going to work with that person either, because it's much more complex than that. I'm interested in a director. And again, of course, I want to work with people of color and women and all kinds of people like that who know how to ask me specific questions, and I can ask them specific questions. Because I look for the questions, as Rilke says, you look for the questions themselves. So we're in a funky time, and I'm giving you a long-winded answer because I think sometimes in certain cases, yes, we have to have trans, we have to have every kind of color person working, but we're in a funny time now where certain ways politics is surpassing art. That's the only way I can put that to you. And I'm linking that with what you're saying, because someone recently, I did that satanic Zoom that I did for 4 hours, right? Where someone said, we have to get rid of a film like Gone with the Wind. And I said, have you lost your fucking mind? And the reason why I said that is because I'm not crazy about seeing those happy slaves. All the slaves were happy in that. But if you remove that film, censorship creates ignorance, i.e. a Trump. When you think that only this person can do that, that person can only do that, you have now become the censor yourself. To take away Gone with the Wind means that a lot of people will not know that Hattie McDaniel was the first Black woman that was nominated and received an Oscar. You won't know how the way Black people were portrayed when you're watching like films like with Latina characters, right? I mean, there's an actress, if you guys don't know who she is, Katie Jurado, which goes back to the 40s and the 50s, who was always like this smoldering woman in love with someone like John Wayne, who would spit on her after he had sex with her. And you won't see how the way Latinos were stereotyped. So when you become that formulaic within your thinking that only this person can do that, that only that person can do that, you have now become the oppressor. Does that make sense to you? And I know that's a very, the answer has gone into various things, because when it just simply becomes about this one can do that and that one can do that, again, in certain cases with a healthy sense of boundary, that can be the case. A lot of the times it's not necessarily the case. I'm working with, besides working with Neel, I'm now working with a wonderful director. Her name is Jade King Carroll. She's Black and Irish. She's mixed race. So, and we talk about this all the time. So again, it's like I personally don't come from that place, but given the demographic of where you are, I understand why you asked that, because Oregon is very, 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 very white.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for asking your question and challenging me so that I can.
No, I wasn't going to challenge per se. I didn't mean to put you on the.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate that I can come away from this conversation and be thinking about what you asked me still.
Yeah, cool.
And I think these things, as Dael said, they're all very specific. So would I have been comfortable, or would I have been asked to direct the play by a different Black writer about something else? I don't know. A lot of it has to do with not just the history of Dael's and my relationship, but that it could have still been a short relationship. But if we trust each other, if we trust each other's interest in this subject, as Dael said, the willingness to dig into the subject, and we obviously knew a lot about each other, so we knew something about each other's feelings about these issues. Dael knows a lot about my family, where I grew up, how all of those things certainly help. But I think it's the specific thing about, can you trust someone? I also think when you direct plays, as you get older and older, or more experienced, would be the more romantic way of saying that. You let go of the idea that you're going to have the answers. You let go of the idea that, and you start to think of yourself as just a participant in an experiment, in a journey that is going to lead somewhere. And I think Dael and I trust that spirit of creation, and we trust each other as partners in that spirit. And so I think you also learn as you direct, as you get older, a lot of it does become very specific and personal. The writers who ask me to work on their work, or people who know me personally, and there's some connection. So it's interesting, we didn't discuss that issue a lot when we started working on the piece. I don't remember discussing it at all. It just seemed right to us. This is a piece that we could help shape each other's shape, But it's certainly an interesting question. And as Dael says, it's, the idea is to try and have as many different kinds of people and as many people as possible working, that's going to be the best thing for all of us. And so.
And your generation is doing it. Thank God for you guys, man. Thank God.
Yeah, it's a question that's coming up a lot, of who has the right to tell what story.
Look, there are people who do bastardize the First Amendment. I've seen that. It's like I've seen, there's a certain performer that I'm not going to mention this person's name, because bad publicity sometimes is better than no publicity at all, who's made, can't do it now, but who's made his career out of playing Black and Latino characters. And mostly. And back in the day, now, people are older, they've changed, but his thing used to be, I'm trying to show white people to what they've done to people of color. I don't need you to speak for me. And also his characters tend to be, and when you try to speak for someone, opposed to speaking to someone, his characters are very one-dimensional. They're the guys out of the street, ... He wouldn't know how to play a cat like James Baldwin. That would be above him. Be way above his ass, He wouldn't know how to do someone, say, because, and he was playing like a lot of like Puerto Rican characters. He has no context, he would know Julia de Burgos, Alejandro Tapia y Rivera. He wouldn't know how to play those cats. And if you don't know who they are, they're great poets from Boricua, from Puerto Rico. He wouldn't know how to do that. But, the guys in the street with, with their hands, with their hands going down to their crotch and up, and all of this kind of stuff, that he knows how to do. And his white characters tend to be caricatures. It's almost as if like he's a white guy who's making fun of white people. It's like opposed to showing, because one character that he was playing from the West, who's like, yo, man, I am like, I'll get in your face and I will like diss you, you know? And it's just, don't play him as a caricature. Play him as someone who's naive. And then, you know, so that kind of thing bothers me. Technically, does he have the right to do it? Yes. But I think in his individual case, no matter how well-meaning, he's donning an ethnic racial drag opposed to embodying people. And he has and it's still all those characters, they're street characters, is, you know, it's all tied into him to a certain kind of hip hop. And again, hip hop now has changed, but it's that whole romantic idea about having to playing people and, you know, getting in the street. And I've had to remind him, I said, you know what, you're not Black or Puerto Rican. He goes, yeah, I know. I said, I don't think you do. But technically he has the right to play those characters. But I get disgusted when I see it. Well, he hasn't done it in a while, but it's the last show, which was a while back, really went to the point where it was like, you know, some of the language that was used. And again, this is the quote unquote, the way people talk, but he must know on a certain level that him doing that is going to bring attention, which it did.
You know, there's an interesting question in all of this too, which is about the casting of the play, because Dael and I, though we love doing the play and we love doing the play together, we both have a dream that the play will also someday be done with a cast of 8 actors, right? Playing one of the parts. And the way we've imagined that is that all 8 actors, that you would cast 8 actors that you wanted to work with. It wouldn't matter the age, the sex, the race, and you wouldn't match up the age, the sex, and the race of the characters. You'd cast 8 wonderful actors. They would all learn all 8 monologues. And every night at the beginning of the show, on stage in front of the audience, they would in essence draw numbers. And that's who they'd play that night. And because there's something about the play, this is sort of indirectly related to the subject of your question, but you know, when you watch Dael in performance do it and you hear the things she's saying and you go in and out of suspending your belief and thinking you're actually watching a white man or a white woman or an older woman or a younger man. And then you also flip back to realizing, oh no, it's Dael Orlandersmith saying those words. There's something about one human body, and often not the correct human body, age, sex, or race-wise for that role, that becomes very moving in the piece, you know? And so it's just another way that I think the piece grapples with those questions you're asking, you know, about how different are we? What are the things that have to be different? And what are the things that are shared humanity that we're hurting ourselves by not sharing? And I think you don't always get the answer to that question right when you make a decision about, I think I can do this, or I think I shouldn't do this, but you try and be thoughtful about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of my students and to Dael and Neel for this really wonderful conversation. Something that came up when I was meeting with the students ahead of this conversation was I always ask them how they'd like to end our time together. And, you know, seeing as we have about 10 minutes left, I'm just starting to ease this into the conversation. But something that Fletcher said was that he really, you know, was moved by the piece. Fletcher, I hope it's okay if I paraphrase what you said, but that he's wondering what the call to action is. You know, what is, it's great to see a piece like Until the Flood and to talk about it, but what are, I mean, if what Dael Orlandersmith says, or said just an hour ago, that my saying is in my doing, what should we do? And I took that from the students, and I was talking to Neel, and Neel said that, well, we want to hear, because I was like, do you and Dael want to bring in a call to action? And Neel was like, no, I want to hear the students' call to action. That's much more exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Right?
And I'm like, yeah, I think that's an amazing idea. So I shot an email to the students, and I don't know if I want you to speak for yourselves. If you each have some action you're going to take after seeing this piece and engaging in this conversation, I'd be curious to hear that. So I don't want to put you on the spot. So I'd say just raise your hand and unmute, and I'd love to hear what you all are thinking about for your next steps. Alexandria, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So after watching the play, it definitely provoked different ideas, thoughts, opinions. My mind and my head was just turning, just thinking of different things and what I really thought about it. And then I saw the email about the call to action, and I was thinking, well, okay, so what can I do? Well, there was two approaches that I guess I kind of thought about. One is more of like an actual like action. So thinking about having some type of organization or group or something of that nature that is able to, if we're supposed to target the youth, that we're able to bring more hope and let them know that they can make the life they want to have, and that they can live the way they want to, not live the way they want to live. I'm trying to find the right words, but I guess just hope, and that, and giving them a chance to express themselves in different areas and in different ways so that they can, I guess, so they can be more vulnerable and not feel as if it has to be something that's kept inside, if that makes sense. Because after watching I believe he was 17 in the play, the 17-year-old student in the play who was like a poet / rapper, when he was talking about his anger, I felt as if sometimes there are instances within the youth that they do have that anger, or they do have those pent up emotions where they feel as if there's no way, there's no place that they can talk about these things. And I'm not just saying just talking about it with a counselor and that's about it, but a chance to, okay, this is how I feel. Where can I express this and turn this into something? Where can I feel as if there's some place I can go with this and I can go further than what I'm constantly being told? And beyond just this organization, another thing besides, an organization, but listening to one another. It was funny because, Dale, you brought that up earlier about perspectives. A big thing I feel like is listening. And I'm not talking about listening to one another with inside your head, you're thinking of a comeback, or you're thinking about your argument, or what are you going to say next? I'm talking about genuinely sitting down with someone and really opening up your heart and your ears and being willing to listen to what they're going to say. And when you do sit back and listen to their opinions, their perspectives, their point of view, you'll be able to notice, like you said, okay, they see the world this way, but it's not just because that's just who they are, because of the way they grew up, because of their environment, because of the people they're surrounded with, because of their job, etc. So I just think another call to action, I think honestly anyone can do, is just talk to someone. Talk to someone and listen to what they have to say deeply and truly, not with some alternative motive, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah, Ariel. And then Marie Antoinette, I see your hand too.
I'm just going to totally hop off of what Alexandria said, because I had the same idea come to mind about really trying to understand where other people are coming from. I think that especially in the climate that I am around right now, and just Chicago and also just the city in general, and city energy and the hub of it's really easy to get sucked into a message that is portrayed, and it's really easy to get sucked into like, okay, I have this fire in me and I want to be a part of something, so I'm just going to join everyone else and we're going to go and we're going to have a whole reaction to something, and it's coming at a conflict in a defense, instead of coming at conflict in a calm way and understanding perspective. And as a call to action, I think for me as a theater maker, as someone who like wants to be impactful in any sense, I've been thinking about what can I offer in particular, and I can only offer like my perspective and my ears to someone else's perspective. And so a call to action for me is, it's just a great reminder, having this conversation, that it's good to be open, and it's also good to not try to tell someone else's story, and to not try to be a different person than who I am, and to not try to be the social activist champion warrior that I want to be, but just be genuine to myself and show up in my theater and collaborations as someone who is ignorant sometimes, and who doesn't understand other people's perspectives, and who isn't afraid to be uncomfortable. And so I think for me, coming away from this conversation, just a call to action and a great reminder is that it's okay to be uncomfortable, and that from those experiences of saying something ignorant or from not having understanding, that's where the true conversation can come from. And that's really what I took away from this play as well, is that it is such a beautiful tool to create conversation.
That's so great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ariel. Marie Antoinette, what do you have to say?
What I have to say is very similar. Yes, what I have to say is very similar to the two people that went before me. I definitely think it's very important to not be afraid to be uncomfortable, because I think a lot of people shy away from things that they don't initially understand or they can't relate to. And I think that that is the most important part of being able to understand one another, and kind of, instead of trying to drive the line of division, just to approach things from a place of empathy and togetherness. I also think, again, that it's very important to listen to other people's stories and why, just like their backstories, their life experience, because I truly think that everyone sees the world in such a different way. I also think it's amazing because that way is so true to them. That is their truth. That is what they experienced and they lived. So hearing that from other people is very important. I think a character I really, who really caught my attention in the play was Reuben, because he talked about stereotypes and how, the world will take what you look on the outside. And even if they don't, mean to be harmful, they can, associate you with some negative connotations. And I think it's really important to look past that and to try not to put anyone in a box, because I don't think that anyone can, truly fit into a box. I also think that it's interesting looking at the events that are happening in our world right now. I feel like this play is still very true to current times, because I feel like this whole summer, and after that, I was waiting for a flood. I was waiting to see what type of flood it would be.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I think that that's very important to be aware of the world around you. Know that you're not, the only person, the only opinion in it, but to also not be afraid to interact with those different things.
Thank you. And Sonia, yes.
I have so much to say about a call to action, but I respect our time, so I'm going to try to do this a little faster. But basically, my call to action has changed since the beginning of this meeting to the end. And I think reading and listening to all of you guys has proved to me that a true call to action is continuously changing your call of actions, because I think every day there's just something different that needs to be done, and there's something different that you need to learn. And really just having conversations with people outside of your demographic and challenging yourself personally, because I think it's really easy to get stuck in the same row of these people believe in what I believe in, and these people say what I want to hear. And anyone who doesn't say that or believe or, coincide with what I have to say, I just rather not hear it.
Right.
And I think that it's important to continuously, get outside of your comfort zone and speak to people of different races, different ages. Because I do, in a way, agree with Michaela said earlier, saying, why would Neel, a white man, direct this play? And I also agree with, with the fact that you need different opinions and resources, and you need someone to challenge you. And I think both of those conversations are extremely needed right now. And we need to understand both sides of what has to be heard.
And it's funny because this is part of another, this would be like, I guess, another talk. Because whether we care to admit it or not, all of us have a racist, a sexist, all those things within us. Because when somebody makes you mad, the first thing you reach for are those things. They don't just become they become a black, white, Asian, whatever it is. When we reach for that, we know, and that's the thing. That's also for certain people, like with Flood, when we were doing it, I think certain people were saying, they were horrified by the fact that, racism lurks within them. And it lurks within within us, because we do have those moments. And certain people will say, well, we're not we don't have political power. There's definitely white male political power, but there's also the everyday power that people have, whether you kick somebody's ass or you say something or you corner someone and you can get away with that sexually, racially, ethnically within that moment. You know, when we do that to people. You know, so again, that's the whole thing. We do have the isms within us, you know, because whether we care to admit it or not. And so that's the thing that's also hard to grapple with, the three fingers pointing back at you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are about at time, but Michaela and Fletcher, do you have any quick calls to action for us before we end our time together?
That's a crazy question. Before we end our time, how are you going to change the world?
I know, just a little thing.
I think what everyone was saying is so accurate and so prevalent. I just personally have had to do a lot of unlearning and relearning just within this hour. And like Sonia said, it's really just all about adapting your thought process and reassessing. So, yeah.
Thanks, Fletcher. Michaela, any last words of wisdom?
Sure. But,
I'm sorry, Michaela.
I don't know about. The only thing I wanted to say is that I think that after watching this play and watching the outrageous amount of Black life that is being taken away at this current moment in time, I think the only call to action that I can say is to my other fellow young white artists, an urge to take the defensiveness that can come up, that is also known as white fragility, and do their very best, do my very best to turn it into defensiveness for and on behalf of Black life. So that is my urge to other white young artists, and something that I'm
specifically
trying hard
also
to
to
do.
other people of color as well. Because I was thinking about like the young woman who was mentally ill in Arizona. 20 cops shoot down this one woman, Native American woman.
Mm-hmm.
And here in New York, you're getting both Black and brown guys, you know, Latino boys that are getting the shit kicked out of them. You know, so yeah, but totally, yes, it's really cool. So, all right.
This has been great. You guys are great.
Neel, you got to call me afterward because something happened. It's like, you know, something else. Call me. Yeah.
I really appreciate, you know, how much time you've spent with the play, how much
You
thought
really
you put in it. You know, hearing Marie talk about like it felt like there was a flood coming, you know, you realize there's sort of a call to action in the title, which is really until the flood comes, what will you do? Because what you do in this moment before the flood will determine what kind of flood it is. And those things can be huge and life-changing, or they can be, as you've all said, and I think which Dael said, the play started with the impulse of conversation, you know, and because of the learning that happens with that. It was the most sad thing to me of all was that all the characters Dael embodies in this play come from within 5 miles of where Michael Brown was shot. And they probably never, they're fictional characters, but the characters they're based on probably never interact with each other in their lives. And they live within 5 miles. And that has to do with the way St. Louis is, the geography of it is set up, but in different neighborhoods. But that lack of communication, that lack of vulnerability of going outside your bubble and talking to other people, you know, is in its own way a huge thing.
It is.
So I'm very touched that you all picked up on that idea.
And I am too. And it's also your questions are gorgeous. Your questions are absolutely
thank you very much.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the kids are all right.
The kids are all yes, they are.
All right.
Yeah, I'm a Who fan too. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dael, you were all right too. You got a lot of love in the comments that I didn't even get to, but everyone really appreciates your candor and your honesty and your wisdom. And we just all really appreciate all 8 of you coming here today and to having this conversation with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To all of you who have watched, thank you so much for staying with us. I'm going to release you all into the internet now and beyond, into your normal lives.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Be safe. Be safe.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so